Well, hello, I'm Teresa Norton, and welcome to The View from Abroad, a podcast that each week takes a look back at one of the columns I wrote for a Hong Kong newspaper between 1993 and 2000. And I'll tell you, looking back 30 years, some of the opinions I expressed some of them feel a little out of step. Some of them feel well out of step with the world we live in today, or my current perspective, or both. So this podcast is about kind of taking a look back at those things and exploring why. And my guest this week is award-winning journalist, historian, and author Vaudine England, who has lived in Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, the Philippines, but she is joining us today from Amsterdam. And before we talk to Vaudine, here's a newspaper column that was published in Hong Kong a quarter of a century ago.
Saturday, January 16th, 1999. A dirty prospect for women. I don't know, maybe I'm nuts, but when I read about the bride shortage up north, the lyrics of a song bounced off the walls of my cranium, and it wasn't Frank Sinatra singing Sammy Kahn's Love and Marriage. John Lennon was right, I said to my walking buddies. Woman is the N-word of the world. Not a word that works its way into my vocabulary, but Lennon knew exactly what sort of shocking statement he was making when he used it to describe the pecking order of humanity. If crap rolls downhill, you can bet there will be a woman of one color or another waiting at the bottom with an open sheet of newspaper to catch it and put it in the bin. Talk about an ill-conceived, bad pun, social experiment, albeit one born out of economic necessity. The one-to-a-customer policy works in theory, except when everybody wants a bouncing baby boy to carry on the family name and bring a little dowry money back into the fold in the bargain. But eventually the penny drops. No chicks equals no brides equals no babies of either variety. Whoopsie. I can tell you right now who is going to pay the price for this little oversight, and it won't be anyone sporting a penis. Look into the crystal ball and see the future. The social experiment has worked. Sort of. Population is under control, and we see a chicken in every pot, and 2 husbands in every bed. I'm serious. Can you even for one moment imagine having more than one husband? Forget the sex and the childbearing thing. I mean the, where are my socks thing. I mean the, while you're up, could you make me a little sandwich thing. I mean the, don't touch the remote control thing. And so poops roll downhill. Look out below. As we walked around the Happy Valley racetrack, we started talking about how economic necessity has deprived an entire generation of children in the Philippines of their mothers. Roll on down. Well, what about the United States, where we've got successful women who can't get off the corporate treadmill until their careers are established, and so are waiting until they're in their 40s to have kids, and more are opting to do it without a husband. Madonna, Jodie Foster, Rosie O'Donnell are high-profile examples. Actually, this didn't sound so bad. A generation of Murphy Brown-like self-reliant mothers. But at the other end of the spectrum, I added, is the 15-year-old mother of 2 on welfare. No partner, probably no father of her own. Get that newspaper in position. Another social experiment gone wrong. Seems they happen all over the planet. The goal is always the same, to make things better for the next generation. We'll control our population, or work abroad and send our money back home, or exercise our right to choose and have a baby alone if we want. But as the options increase, so does the number of social experiments, the ramifications of which won't be realized in some cases until it's too late. Over dinner with friends the other night, my husband said, it's a hostile world for women, so we have to raise our daughters to be tough. I think he's right. The world isn't going to change. We can keep experimenting until doomsday, but women will still be the ones catching it and putting it in the bin, so to speak. I think the best we can do is to raise our daughters with that old scouting axiom in mind. Be prepared. Keep a little mad money in your handbag and a rolled-up piece of newspaper with you at all times. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Good morning, Vaudine.
Good morning, Teresa. How do you do?
Oh, thanks for joining me from Amsterdam. There are so many things I want to talk about that feel out of step with today. You received a copy of the actual column, so you know that I cut something out.
Yes, you did, which is fine. It shows how language changes over time. Some words are perfectly okay to use in some areas and then become absolutely toxic in others. This is the word you cut, the N word, shall we call it, is probably the most toxic word of the past century. Although, indeed, as you rightly noted, it was still being used, at least in songs, a quarter of a century ago. It would cause a riot if we did that now.
Well, interestingly, you can still hear it on Spotify.
Isn't that
John
great?
Lennon and Yoko Ono recorded "Woman is the N-word of the world" in 1972, almost, that's half a century ago.
It is.
And at the time, that song, when they released it, it was sent to 300 radio stations in the United States, and only 2 of them would play it. In fact, Yoko Ono was the person who came up with that phrase. She said it in an interview with, I've done a little research here, with a magazine called Nova. The column opens with me saying, I think he was right. And this is my point today. I don't feel that I can walk a mile in anybody's shoes. Who am I to say that this is every woman's experience and that term could be something that could apply to the wide variety of examples that I use? I can't walk a mile in anybody else's shoes because, well, first of all, they're not my shoes. And second of all, I don't know the journey that they've taken to the point where I'm putting them on and trying to walk a mile forward, So
Okay.
that was my real problem with this.
Okay, I didn't have that problem because I think there are general statements that can be made about being a woman and what the situation is when you're female. Definitely different centuries, different generations. I mean, we both had a huge number of opportunities that our mothers never had the chance to take. We had a whole lot more opportunities also because we were white and not, for example, coming from a very conventional Chinese family. And of course, you're speaking to someone who actually very much enjoyed researching and writing the history of the Hong Kong Club, the oldest institution of its kind in Hong Kong, the original sort of colonial gentlemen's club, which, of course, did not allow in what they called members of the local community until 1964. But the point I would like to get to here is that it was still all only men. And that is a kind of a key point. Women could be there as wives or as daughters, as sort of hangers-on, as handbags. And some of them vastly enjoyed that and had great fun with it. I've spoken with them. Other women, dear friends, former High Court judges and so forth in Hong Kong, said, well, they would love to be members, but they were not going to be members of that club until they could join on equal terms, which was not possible until 1996. And it was only possible because there was a much more wide-ranging anti-sexual discrimination law came in. So the club was forced to follow the law. So, of course, lots of friends who've known me for a long time think, you're doing what? The Hong Kong Club? It was sort of like another planet for me. I had to get new clothes so that I could get through the front door. And that I was going to have all this problem with racism and colonialism and whatever. And I'm saying, no, actually, what I had problem with is the sexism. I mean, of course, there are other issues, but there are ways to generalize and to walk in other people's shoes if you are relating to a particular political issue, which exists and has existed.
Yeah, I take your point there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course,
so here's another one. Another one. The single mother issue.
Mm-hmm.
The examples that I use basically are all successful celebrity white women.
Yeah.
And if you listen to if I read it today, in the wording that I had then. And of course, I'm very sensitive to this. I mean, that's the point of this podcast, is for me to do a little, not self-flagellation, but a little exploration.
You're living in a Catholic country. I know.
and the idea of, it sounds a little bit like a right-wing defense of taking away a woman's right to choose when I read it today.
Yikes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what you were thinking at the time, or what your personal circumstances were, because that would also affect what you were writing about, I guess. I have no idea. But the thing is, you're talking to someone who chose from a very early age that I never wanted children. And I was quite clear on that. And I had the ability to choose that. And I remember asking my mother once, because she'd had actually 5 children, 4 of whom survived. And to me, that was just, I said, Mum, why did you have so many children? And her answer was, well, she didn't really feel she had a choice, which, means I wouldn't exist if she'd had a choice. But no, there we are. To each generation, their own sets of possibilities. But of course, I think what's maybe missing in a way in your earlier column is that behind each of these choices that are seen as perhaps lifestyle or social experiments or whatever, we're not analyzing, I'm going to sound very left-wing here, but the actual economic circumstances. When you're wealthy of a certain class, you can do what you want. You can hire maids or helpers. You can be a single mother. You can, how many kids has Madonna got from, how many exotic countries? It's a lifestyle choice. Now, only wealthy people of whatever color can do that. What's far more important, probably, and less acceptable in some of the Asian societies which I've lived in, is the idea that first of all, women have the right to choose that, or if they haven't chosen it, but they end out as a single mother, that there should be systems and structures that support them, that help them.
Well, I volunteered for a couple of years at the charity Mother's Choice in Hong Kong, which was put together by 2 expat couples because girls in Hong Kong were going across the border to have dodgy abortions because they didn't have the support systems in place for them to understand that they had some other choices. So, yeah, I mean, listen, to be fair to my younger self, I did make the point. Yeah. Thank you. And that's why I invited you on, so that you could, take this horrible burden off my shoulders.
It doesn't matter if you said everything exactly right or not, but you were expressing
the
concern
point
about
I was trying to
issues.
Make.
I mean,
thank you.
You prompted discussion, I'm sure, over some Sunday breakfast tables, and that could have been really interesting if you'd been a fly on the wall. That could be fun.
Well, about the only thing I can say that I absolutely have no qualms about the way that I wrote the point I was trying to make was that sort of last paragraph that said, be prepared. We need to raise our children, all of our children, but we're talking about women and or females. Again, this all kind of turns into you mentioned something to me ahead of time about, back in the day, not wanting WOMEN. I remember that. It was, what was it? How do we spell it?
Women. No, WIMMIN.
Yeah.
The first time I was at university, unfortunately, was in Australia, and I'm from New Zealand, and Australia is a different place. And I, having been at that point sort of young and blonde and naive and so forth, was getting way too much attention, and so ended out in a very, what we might call, well, in fact, what they did call a radical lesbian separatist feminist collective. And I was often in trouble because obviously I was neither lesbian nor separatist, but I felt quite radical and feminist, so that was fine. And, the idea was we were not going to use this word men, M-E-N, in any word signifying ourselves. We weren't just a sort of an appendage to men. We were not women, we were women. So, you had to spell it differently, and we lived in women's houses.
What did they do with female?
Well, yeah, that's it. I don't think we used that one. I don't think we used it. It's easy. You can choose to be critical of your columns if you like, but and I can surely take the piss out of some of the things that happened with the collective. When one day they're at one women's house, so it was only women living in the house, right? You're only going to live. It was not where I was living. But their TV broke down, and I thought, hang on a minute, why are you watching TV? Surely that is a sort of male-identified media, right? But no, they needed their TV to work, but they could not, in all of West Australia, find a TV repair woman. And it had to be a man who would come to the house to fix their TV. How are they going to do this? Because you can't get the man in the house. So in the end, they decided they could put it on the windowsill. He would be in the garden telling them, how to fix. And I just thought this had gone too far. It was a pretty stupid thing. There were lots of other very valuable things that came out of that whole time. And was
that TV episode the straw that broke the?
It was
that women's back.
Yeah, that's when I started to think. I think this is getting a bit silly. But before that, the first demonstrations I ever went on in my life were, of course, pro-choice, and it was quite. It was at the time when you still in Australia had mounted police, on horses. It's quite terrifying when, these horses are coming at you and you're supposed to get out of the way and things. So, this again, I think the point about your column is that the issues you raise have not gone away. And, that's about abortion. Right now in the US election, with any luck, it will get that woman into power. But, these things still have to be fought for, I find quite shocking. Yeah. And it is also, there's a lot of examples of this. And, when governments decide things or economic choices are made, that's one thing. But what women have the right to do or say or how they choose to run their life is still something you have to actually insist upon on a daily basis. I find that's important. That's your point. I think you should take that as your point. So.
Thank you. I know that was the point I was trying to make. I just look back on it and I think some of the ways I was trying to make it feel a little out of step with the way that we talk about things today.
That's
right?
Fine. That was then. Yeah. This is now. But the issues are the same.
That's well said. Thank you.
I'm a historian.
Yeah, I love it. I got the right woman on this on this podcast. Yeah. Okay.
I still really like men, just to make that clear.
Okay. I know you've got a good one at home, don't you?
You
do indeed. All right. Let's take a little break because when we come back, I want to hear what word or phrase out of that column spawned a true story, a memory from your past. And also, I'm really looking forward to our little commercial break because I know what we're going to be talking about. Okay, here we go. I have got my copy of Fortune's Bazaar right in my hot little hands. Alan Caldry, our mutual friend who brought us together, gave me this wonderful book that you've written about the making of Hong Kong. Let me let you describe it yourself because it's got so many, it's one of the, I had it out and a friend who was visiting, who lived in Hong Kong for a while, picked it up. It's the kind of book you can read cover to cover, and you can also pick up and just take a bite.
I'm glad to hear that last bit because it became a monster. It started very deceptively, if we could put it like that. I thought I was just researching, a particular family's background. And then after a while, as sort of family upon family became known to me in Hong Kong, and families who have been in Hong Kong 5-6 generations at least, and therefore, what to me was an interesting point is have far outlasted many of the numerical majority of Hong Kong people who there was only a majority. This is the most shocking fact I came across in this book. You only get a majority of Chinese being born in Hong Kong after World War II. So I kind of thought, wow, who were all these people? What was going on before? And of course, always the numerical majority of people in Hong Kong has been Chinese. There's no debate about that. And they've been written about and researched till kingdom come. But a lot of them would come and go. You know, they'd come to Hong Kong when China was too much of a mess or too dangerous or too poor. And then after a bit, they'd go back or come, that kind of thing. So I got kind of obsessed, and it took years alongside other things. But who are all these other people who were not part of the main sort of narrative of Hong Kong? Families who, for example, who I just got to know who were interesting. And it turned out one particular family, you know, they're a mixture of German, Jewish, Parsi and Chinese. Now, Parsis are originally from what was used to be Persia, and they're Zoroastrians, you know, sun worshippers. Yeah. They migrated in big numbers to India for several generations, and then they're a beautiful example of a trading diaspora who went all over the world. Plus, you get really important people in Hong Kong. I mean, who doesn't know Chater Road and Chater Square, etc.? And Paul Chater was an Armenian guy from Calcutta. And I started thinking, hang on, all these guys are really weird. I mean, you know, they're different. And then I was doing some historical research for Hong Kong Land. And I discovered, you know, you think archetypal British Hong, right? The British company. For the first 50 years of its existence, every single member of the board of Hong Kong Land, apart from one Scots guy who was the Jardines guy, everybody else was either Eurasian, so of some mixed blood variation, Armenian, Parsi, or Jewish. No one of them fit this so-called, what we think of, you know.
Colonial,
so then you start to think, okay, hang on, what does this word British mean? What does this word Chinese mean? Who are we including in all of this? Not your, I mean, it's fine if you've got a British civil servant, but, you know, you don't want too many of them. You want these people who bring great trading networks from across the world, from across what I would call Eurasia. My definition of a Eurasian sort of expanded massively so that I could include geographically Armenia, you know, way over there. And, you know, and it is the Eurasian continent. All these different peoples and trading networks coming through the Middle East, Southeast Asia. These are the guys who played a big role in making Hong Kong, who had not previously been written about. But can I connect this to your column just briefly?
Oh, please do.
Because, and I was really honored, Michelle Garneau, the restaurateur, to beat all restaurateurs and much more than that. She said to me at one point, she said, you know, actually, this is a kind of a feminist book, isn't it? Which I hadn't actually thought of consciously while I was doing it. Obviously, it sort of seeped out. But the point about a whole lot of these families is that they start with a very young, possibly involuntary migrant to China. She's been trafficked, probably. We didn't, but again, it's words. We use those words now. It was not used then. So in the 1840s, 1850s, young Chinese women are shunted into Hong Kong one way or another to service all the sailors and the soldiers and the traders and all the rest of it. So they're sex workers of different kinds. Now, the really smart ones would try to become what are called protected women, which is a classic euphemism. It's like comfort women in the World War II. But in other words, hopefully you've got one rich guy who's looking after you.
Looking after you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
supposedly protecting you from all the other rich guys. I don't
You're
know.
sort of sugar daddy.
So these women, I mean, seriously worked very hard for the money. They were often talking about single mothers left holding the baby because, then the trader left. I mean, the most famous Hong Kong family, Ho Tung, a Dutch guy, he buggered off and she's left holding several babies in actual fact. And we only know her first name and almost nothing else about her. I mean, it's extraordinary. And one of the reasons why a lot of these families had never gone into their own history is that for generations they would think, oh God, no, we don't want to talk about the fact that, a great grandma was a sex worker. Well, I think you need to be proud of these women because what they did with their kids, and Hong Kong's colonial structure with all its pros and cons actually had multiracial schools available for these women to put their kids into. They got educated. They became leaders of society. Yeah.
Leaders of society. And for listeners who are not from Hong Kong and not familiar with all of this, great philanthropist.
That too. I mean, hugely wealthy and hugely generous in dishing it out and absolutely shaped Hong Kong in a million ways. And it all starts with one woman who's having to make a living on her back. So, we should sort of honor those women. That is kind of part of it.
Okay. Let's talk about where you can get this book. It's on Amazon. It's called Fortune's Bazaar, The Making of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And you can also find it through the Simon and Schuster .com/book site.
Yeah, or through Hachette if you're in England. It's in Waterstones, so we're happy. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, you should be. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the show. Okay. I have to know, what was the phrase or word that spawned a true story, a memory from your past?
Well, women, obviously. And the thing that immediately sprang into my mind was on my first trip to Hong Kong. So my parents were living there for 10 years. And they were not the normal expats. They're sort of long-haired, left-wing Presbyterian missionary types. So I was brought up in the arms of the Lord and luckily got out of them. But my first trip to Hong Kong, obviously, to see the parents after I'd been a year at university, I was informed by the parents that I had to do voluntary work, which is an interesting concept in itself. I, of course, just wanted to go work in the Go Down bar because
that was a bar. That was an infamous bar. Many late nights at the Go Down.
Yeah,
and the Go Down. Wait a minute, I just have to add something else. The Go Down has a different sort of connotation depending on where you're living. What it meant in Hong Kong was the when the ships would come in and unload the warehouses on the dock sides were the go downs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
We go. Anyway, this bar was
No, you're right. And in fact, it was suggested once I should write, I could have been a go down girl in that I actually went there for a job interview and everything until I got the word from the Reverend, my father, that no, that wasn't going to happen. I had to do voluntary work. I was given a list of organizations to choose from. I had a choice of which voluntary work I had to do. And so kind of being a bit angry about all of this, I chose the most aggressive sounding group on the list, which was called the War on Rape. Now, the most wonderful thing about this is that this is how I met this most amazing woman of Hong Kong. And some of your listeners might recall a woman who was called Edith Horsfall at the time. She and her husband, Peter Horsfall, they were both doctors. She was incredibly active in all sorts of social causes and issues and a million things. She's now Edith Waldman. She's 96. She's still in London. She's the most inspirational and fantastic person I know. And she had set up this thing called the War on Rape because she had noticed that in Hong Kong law, it wasn't always automatically a copy of British law. Things would really lag. And so that when improvements might have been made to a British law, it didn't necessarily automatically flow through to Hong Kong. And so the problem was she wanted somebody to sit in. I mean, this was not fun. This was my first holiday in Hong Kong. She wanted someone to sit in on the rape trials in the Supreme Court, which then was in the French Mission building, behind the old Hilton when we still had the Hilton Hotel.
Right, right.
And that lovely brick thing up on the hill, Battery Path.
Yeah, it's near it's near St. John's Cathedral, yeah?
Yeah, it is, right next to it, yeah.
Yeah.
And to see how the legal system in Hong Kong was handling rape trials. So, and
how old were you at the time?
19.
Wow, that's an important thing to know.
It was not great fun. I would go and sit and listen to these horrendous trials, which was also kind of extremely painstaking because it was often in two languages and back and forth, and I was making notes. I mean, this is before I knew I was going to be a journalist, but basically I guess I was being a court reporter. The point of all of this was that these reports and those of some others, went into a study that was done by this group organized by Edith, and went into a law reform process that tried to change the law. Now, again, relating to your column, what I thought was so interesting is that the way that these issues don't go away. I just read in The Guardian a week ago that still at least a third, almost half of women in rape trials in England still get asked about, what were they wearing? How much had they drunk? Because if it's like their fault that another human being has violently imposed themselves upon her. And that was kind of the issue in the courts back in the day was, actually, no, you don't need to know the woman's whole sexual history. You shouldn't be asking, is she a virgin? Was she a virgin before this? As if that would make it, implication being if she was a virgin, would be a much worse crime, right? Her precious thing that only belonged to one man had been taken from that man, the future man, by another man. So therefore, it's all still about the men.
That's so interesting because my thought was, if you're asking if the person was a virgin, you're establishing were they. Did they have, multiple sexual partners or whatever? But that's an interesting point. That what was the defense would be.
Well, I mean, it varied. I mean, but I know that it was raised in one of the. I mean, God knows, it was ages ago. Somewhere in all this mess behind me, I might still have the notes, but there is this possessiveness, that about virginity, but it's usually felt by the men rather than. I don't know about you, but I was quite happy to get rid of it. And I then decided that turning 40, which again was quite some time ago, was just kind of like losing your virginity, quite a relief when it happened, and it didn't hurt as much as you thought.
Oh.
But so anyway, that's what your column started me thinking about, was the fact that through that sort of fairly awful time I was having with my parents, I met Edith, and Edith is there are women around the world who love Edith, who have been inspired by her and moved by her, and she still, even now, and her trick on everything is to stay engaged, to remain engaged. I could email her right now and she would answer within 5 minutes, and she would be totally on the ball and saying, yes, you're right. Did you see that story in The Guardian? And then, of course, there's other whole saga that's going on in France with this woman who, was raped for 10 years by her husband's many friends while being rendered unconscious. And again, it's unbelievable. I mean,
and it wasn't even friends. It sounded like it was just, a random thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
None of them said anything. Anyway, so all these awful things, but on the other hand, the wonderful things about the people you meet and the kind of people you meet in a place like Hong Kong.
And the career that you've had, that very likely started with all of that history gathering that you were doing back then. Right. Well, listen, let me thank you so much for being with us all today. And let's give one last hurrah to this fabulous book, Fortune's Bazaar, The Making of Hong Kong, Vaudine England. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Teresa. A pleasure. Thank you.